Hello juniors, today we are going to learn how to make variables in Python. So once you open the clips, you're going to want to make a new project called variables and download the variables outline.py. Then move the .py into the projects folder and use that file to follow along with this video. The first thing that we are going to go over is the structure of variables. So when working with variables, the structure is simple. It is just name equals data. So when you have the name of the variable, an equal sign, and then the data you want to store in the variable. We use these so that we can access the data later by using the variable name. Now the name of the variable follows the same rules. They should start with the same letter. They should follow camel casing, which means that the start of every word should be capitalized except the first word. So camel casing is like project 2 or this is data. Those are examples of camel casing. They can have numbers, but it is not preferred. They can be any length, but keep them short as possible. They cannot be the same as Python keywords such as print, true, false, etc. Now that we have gone over the basics, we are going to go over some examples of different types of variables. The first one that we are going to go over is integer. So there are a lot of different types of variables because there are different types of data. The first type of data is integer. Integers are pretty simple. It's just a equals 5, a equals 4, a equals 3. The next type of data that we have is called a float. So with floats, they're just like integers. They store numbers, except their numbers have decimals. So a equals 3.45, a equals 5.43, and a equals 4.32. The next type of data that we have is called a string. So with string data, it's a string of text. So a equals Samantha, a equals Michael, and a equals Nino. You have to put these quotes around it so that Python knows it is a string of characters. You could also do a equals Samantha and Michael, because you can put spaces here since spaces are still just characters along with everything else that is in these quotation marks. Next we have our Booleans. For Boolean data, it is either a equals true or a equals false. And notice that the color of true and false change color because it is a keyword. The last type of variable we have is a list. So this stores a list of information. You start the list with a bracket. So a equals a bracket. And then you put whatever data you want inside. For example, you could do a equals 1, 2, 3, 4. You need it to separate each data point by a comma, and then make sure that you have the closing bracket, like this. You could also do strings in a list, like a equals, there's your bracket. You could do Sam, comma, Michael, comma, Nino, and then have that closing bracket. You can also store Booleans in a list, so you could do a equals bracket true, comma, false, comma, true, and then have that closing bracket as well. You could also even store floats in a list, such as a equals bracket 3.2, comma, 4.5, comma, 5.8 with that closing bracket as well. So in total, we have 5 types of variables, 5 types of data. We have integer, float, string, Booleans, and lists. So those are the different types of variables that we are going to have you make throughout the course of this program. Now let's talk a little bit about manipulating variables. So when you are working with variables, there are certain ways they operate. For instance, I'm going to make a variable called var a and set that to 1. This variable is different from var a with a lowercase a, which equals 2, because var a equals 1 and var a equals 2. These are two different variables. Furthermore, programming is top-down, so say I do print a after this list, so right here do print a. It is going to print this list right here, because that is the last a value I put into Python, because every single time you set a variable, you are changing what's inside of it. So you are overwriting what's inside. So up here, when we had a equals 5, it did equal 5. Once we did this line, it got rid of the 5 data and put in the 4 data, and so on. So now it is 3, 3.45, 5.43. But if you would do print after everything, so if I did print a, print a, print a, and we would run it, it would give you that answer in the console down here. So run as Python run. It is going to give you the answers to all of the different prints I did throughout this, and even the one down here. But none of these, because we don't have that print function by them. Just know that every time you overwrite, you change data, and as you are manipulating it, it will change and you can overwrite it. So, when you are talking about types of data, you can change a variable's type just by setting it. So var equals 4 is now an integer variable, but if we would do var equals string, it is now a string variable. Additionally, you can set one variable to another variable. So, I can make var 2 with that camel casing equal to var. And now that we know the var equals string, so if we print out print var 2 and run it, it will print out string. And notice that it does not print the parentheses or the quotation marks, because when you're talking about string variables or string data, it does not print that. Whereas with list, it will print the brackets. It prints the whole list. The cool thing about list is that you can have a lot of data stored within it. You can even have a variable stored within a list. So you could put b equals with the brackets a, which we know from before. I could do var a, and then I could put var, which we know is a string. And that is a list of 3 variables, but the data is a list of an integer, and list of a string. So you can mix that around. So if I would do print b and run this, it should give us a list with a list, list with a variable, and list with a string. Let's say I make this list and I just make it string. So I make list equals bracket a, comma, b, comma, c, and print it, print list. It will print everything, but what if I just wanted to access only one of those data points? All I would have to do is print list and then add brackets after list and tell it what item you want to access. Lists start with indexes, so the first item in the list is 0. So here it is 0, so A is 0, B equals 1, and C equals 2. So notice the list has 3 items, but the last item in the list is going to be 2 because it starts at 0 and goes up from there due to indexes. So if I do print list 0 right here, it prints A. It only prints A. So let's see, run as Python run. it is only going to print A because we did that. But say I put 1 here and do run, it's going to give me B. And the same if I would put 2 in here and run as, it will give me C, and like it did right here. You can also set variables to stuff. So if I make a list var, so this is a separate variable, and I set it to list at 0, and then I print out list var, we get the same A and A. So if I do list var equals list 0 and do print list var run, it will give me A. Note you can do the same thing with strings. So if I do a string with string equals Samantha, strings also have indexes. So if I print out the first index of the string, which is 0, and do print string and do bracket with the index, and I run it, it is going to print out S for Samantha because that's the first item and the first letter in the string of characters. The last thing I want to make sure you all understand is this print statement. So the print works by you putting whatever you want to print out to the console in the print statement. So if I can print 5, I can also print string. I can also print true. I can also print list. And if I would run those, they would all come out right here. 5 string true A, B, C, because that list up here is what we have right here because we never printed that. The next thing I want to cover with variables is errors. Sometimes we get the things wrong while programming. This is called an error or a bug. There are 2 types of errors. There are syntax errors and logical errors. So syntax error means that there is a problem with the syntax. The syntax is the arrangement of words and phrases to create sentences in a language. Programming is still a language. The sentences just don't look like sentences to us. When we write a sentence in English, we need a subject and a predicate. So when we are making variables, we need a name, an equal sign, and data. To make a variable, we would write var equals 4. Var being the name, the equal sign being the equal sign, and the 4 being the data. So when we say there is a syntax error, that means we created our sentence wrong. This means that we are missing one of the key pieces. So common syntax errors for variables are missing a part of the sentence, like equals 4, also adding in a part that shouldn't be there, such as doing var equals 4. That is also wrong. Or putting something out of order if we would do 4 equals var. That is also wrong. Logical errors means that there is a problem with the program's logic. This is kind of like when a story doesn't make sense. Samantha needs groceries. Samantha eats her groceries. Now we can assume in the middle that Samantha went to the store, picked up groceries, and then cooked them, but a computer wouldn't be able to fill in those missing gaps. So a logical error is when there are holes in the logic of the program. To fix the grocery problem, we would say Samantha needs groceries, Samantha writes a list, Samantha travels to the grocery store, Samantha buys groceries, Samantha takes them home, Samantha cooks the groceries, Samantha eats her groceries. With programming, we need to be very specific for the computer. So we need to explain each part so that the logic is all there. So common variable logical errors would be using a variable before we create it. So if we would just do print var, we are jumping to conclusions because we have not specified what var is yet. Another one is using the wrong variable. So if we would write var equals 4 and we would do print variable, we are printing the wrong thing because print actually needs to be var and then it would work. So now going over what you have to do, remember to turn in your outline, which you should have been completing while following along with this video. If not, you can always go back through and watch it again. After you finish your outline or submit it, make sure you go onto Canvas and download the drills.py, and you are going to go through it and complete all of the items. You are going to download it, put it into your projects folder, and just go through and do what it says. Then once you are done completing your drills, you are going to go to the debug variable drills, and you are going to download it and also put it into your projects folder. Only pay attention to the errors associated with variables. Use the common errors we covered to search the functions. Use the function's description to check for logical errors. The description will always say what the function is supposed to do. And that is all I have for you today. Have a good rest of your day and have fun with variables.